The TC750X is another recent release by Shadow as part of their new product blitz. It features twin XML U2s pumping out about 1200 lumens, manufacturer claims. This is currently the second most powerful light in their lineup, ranking right behind the SL3 at 1500 lumens. Before we dive into the light, just get into the packaging here. Generic cardboard eco packaging that features a sticker with a handwritten model number and CW indicating cool white version. So I assume that there should be a neutral white version. Now within here was ample foam as well as a lanyard with mini attachment ring, and then a bunch of accessories which features 2 spare O-rings, red ones, 1 black O-ring, 2 spare lenses, a spare tail cap switch, and a spare rubber tail cap cover. Now one of the, I guess, most obvious comments that's received on the internet about this particular light is the fact that it does bear a strong resemblance to the Klarus XT20. Some would even say that it's a clone, but it's not. To me, a clone means it's an identical copy, and as you will see, leaving the style-wise aside, even the switch implementation is a bit different, which I'll do a deep dive into later. However, both lights do feature XML U2s. The output is similar, and I believe they both implement PWM. Pretty poor implementation on both, actually, because there's measured on my PVC LMD, since I never got my oscilloscope set up. It's just a weird high peak trough constant in all levels. So high, medium, low, you will see that. Now there is a bit more heat mass, I should say mass to dissipate heat on the Klarus XT20 versus the TC750X. And one of the comments that was received in the XT20 review was the desire for a side switch, because that would really help the usage while you're hand holding it this way with an underhand grip. So looks like that's been answered, but again, the implementation is different. Now why is because the X2020 actually features a dedicated strobe switch and a mode changing switch. So while this is a master on-off switch, one can instantly activate strobe by pressing that, or to engage it, press and hold for a few seconds, and it would stay on. Now to turn on the light, press it down, and you would change the modes that way. So that's why there was a lot of comments that, you know what, if you want to change modes while you're holding this in an underhand mode, you literally have to use 2 hands and then change the mode. So that was a key wish which has been answered in this light by the side switch. So on-off, master on-off is here. This switch will not function if this master on-off is off, as you can see, nor will it engage instant strobe with that master switch off. So I guess that's a pro and a con. Maybe you don't want accidental activation, this would be great, but if you do want instant strobe, then this is not the light for you. Again, the master on-off turns on the light, it will always default to high, there is no memory mode. So on high, cycle to medium, low, and you're probably picking that up on the camera right now. You can see there's a lot of, again, if PWM, or if not, if it's constant current, it's a very, very weird implementation of it. So, alright, to activate strobe at any point, you double click. But what will happen is, like the rest of the shadow lights that I've reviewed, well, so far it's the SL3, but what it will do is it will actually cycle to the next level and then engage strobe. So as you see, it stepped down and then went up to strobe. Right, now beam profile wise, let me just step down the exposure a little bit for a second so it doesn't overwhelm the picture here. Okay, so again, as you can see, this is on high mode, but yet you can see that flickering on the camera. But beam profile wise, total is about 45 to 135, like roughly 90 degrees, and the center there is roughly 30 to 35 degrees. But the beams do converge nicely into a single hotspot, roughly about 6 inches away. Okay, step up the exposure here. Now, this particular model does come with 2 orange peel reflectors. There is no AR coating as far as I can tell on the lens. Hold on, exposure is a bit high. And it does feature 2 stainless steel bezels that are removable. As someone had requested on the forums, I actually tested to see if a standard Shortfire bezel would fit in here, but it does not. The Shortfire outer diameter of the threads is actually a bit small, so you could fit it in, but it just will not thread on. And another question asked was whether or not this is P60 compatible. I don't believe it is, but that's only because I cannot actually remove the reflector. It's either glued on or screwed in, but given there's very tight tolerance, I can't really get my fingers in there to try to twist out the reflector. So again, I don't know if the reflector is removable in here. Design-wise, again, so compared to XT20, I actually feel that the heat fins is a bit too high here, right? And the reason is because the XML probably sits right here, and I've noticed in general, lights, the heat tends to travel towards the rear, since the bulk of that emitter where it meets the, I guess, either a plate here or a heatsink here, it actually generally travels more towards this way than it does that way. So I don't feel it's particularly optimized versus the XT20. As you can see, the heat fins is a bit lower. All right, but again, because of that step down after roughly 3 minutes, it's kind of irrelevant unless you keep trying to re-engage it, in which case, yes, he can get pretty hot. But in general, with the step down implementation, it actually doesn't get all that hot. Now, taking the light apart, I actually did want to show you a pretty cool setup that another forum member had requested here. I do have here a TC750, 350, correct. And this is a single cell, another new product by Shadow. Now the reason why I'm demoing this particular light is because the tube is actually Legoable with this light. Now it's been mentioned in the specs that the TC750X can run on a single cell, but I haven't been able to get it to do so. But in this particular setup, as you can see, it can run on two 18350s. Alright, so it's a pretty nifty compact setup that is an option for owners, but of course that would entail that you do acquire the TC750X and the TC350 as well. I'm not sure if a Shorty tube is currently available separately. Alright, now as you saw, there is a spring on the head, on the bottom side of the head, so it can accept flat top cells, but the problem with that is that because it does require two cells to run, I think that point would be moot unless you use a magnet in between your two flat top cells. Now overall, the threads is not square cut, but at the head side, I didn't feel too much grit or issues getting this to engage. It does thread on smoothly. The tail cap side, however, is problematic. I don't particularly care for it. Feels like it hasn't been fully deburred. Now there was ample grease applied, or more like an oil type of grease applied, but again, I just kind of feel, and probably not going to come out here, but I will get macro shots in my full written review. It just kind of feels like it's not fully deburred, and there is some grittiness as I'm threading on the tail cap. Another thing I don't really particularly care for is this ring, retaining ring that holds down the lanyard holder. It just seems like an afterthought. It's super flimsy, and it just does not match the quality of the rest of the light. I mean, overall quality of the light is pretty decent, except, like I said, for this piece, and if I really wanted to nitpick, even this piece, it's super thin. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be very robust, but some things to keep in mind if you're considering the purchase of this light. Now there is a compact ring here. See, I'm not even going to fiddle with that because, again, I just find it particularly fiddly. Oh, sorry. One last thing I did want to point out here is this O-ring. It's a little on the thin side, I guess, but for some reason, the way that it is, I've noticed on a few occasions as I remove the tail cap, this O-ring will come up and catch onto the thread. So as you thread it down, it could potentially wedge in here and damage the O-ring. So one last thing to keep in mind. Overall, I just feel like I guess the tail end of this light could probably be redesigned to be a little better fit and finish wise. But beyond that, the rest of the light is pretty solid. I didn't encounter any other issues. The stainless steel bezel here does fit pretty flush, as you can see, and this was literally using only just my hand, since there are no grooves in the bezel here to insert a tool to get that on and off. Now the overall anodizing finish, for the most part, it does match between the head and the body, although the tail cap, again, as you can see, even under this fluorescent lighting, you should be able to tell that this is a lighter shade than the rest of the light. The laser engraving for the most part I've noticed is pretty decent, although on some of the other, their older lights for instance, was a little flaky. And speaking of which, this is a JM07 that I like to pick on because of the anodized finish, but regardless, they had a website that potentially they never used or whatnot. This website never went anywhere, whereas on their new light, finally, this is actually Shadow's new website, shadow-amu.com, if my autofocus ever catches up. There we go. Alright, so again, overall a very solid light. The lumens output I did verify to be around 1200 lumens, maybe just slightly north of that, but overall feature wise, simple, just on off, mode changes through here, which does allow you to easily use it with underhand grip. Now, however, though, if you do want to use it overhand and you want to change modes, you would have to use both hands. So there's a counterpoint for those who wish to have the side switch here because you don't have one here and you can't change the modes using this. This is purely for just on and off. Well, that sums up the review of this light, and as part of FTC disclosures, this light was provided by sbflashlights.com for review, and thanks again for watching.